Hey guys, in today's video we're going to take apart a 1983 Hunter original and clean out all the dust and gunk and get it running just like new again. You can see here that the rotor inside the fan is very stiff and kind of uneven. Now this thing should spin so freely that with just a push it should go for about 10 or 15 seconds and it's stopping almost immediately. Now what's nice about these fans, especially these old 70s and early 80s models, is they don't have any electronics to fail. You're mainly just talking about wire and switches, so because of that these are very easy to fix up and restore. Alright, so to clean this thing up we're going to need a couple things. WD-40, don't need too much of it. Some steel wool. Some channel locks to take off that bearing nut. A Phillips head screwdriver. And paper towels and cleaning rags. So the first thing I'm doing here is flipping the fan up on its side so I can easily take off the bottom plate and start disassembling the fan. Now when you do this you could have some oil coming out of here, so it's a good idea to maybe stuff some paper towels in there to keep it contained. So what I'm going to do is actually just take apart this fan and clean the parts individually as I go. So the first thing I'm going to take off and clean is this isolation ring. Now what an isolation ring does is it helps keep the motor vibrations off of the blades, because if they get to the blades amplify the vibrations. So you basically just have a series of these little rubber isolators to keep this rotor from directly reverberating onto the blade irons. And yeah, you're going to have a bit of an oily mess here. It's to be expected. Just make sure you keep all these parts together. It's not always easy tracking this stuff down. Hunter warranty care is basically useless on these old fans. Alright, so now I'm going to clean this thing off. I'm just going to use basically a wet rag, maybe some WD-40 to strip off some of the grease and oil. Alright guys, now that the isolation ring is off, I'm going to take off the faceplate. On these old fans it's going to be 4 screws. One here, one here, one here, and then one here. So let me do that now. Yeah, so that comes off pretty easily. Now I'm just going around and cleaning out all these vent holes. One interesting thing, you can see that this is actually a stamped bottom plate rather than a cast one, because it has, you know, this is cleared out. It's not a solid thick piece of metal. That's something you usually see on the brass originals, but sometimes you'll see one on a black or brown or white one like this. And there are some spots that are going to need some touch up on this too. Alright guys, now we're getting to the fun part. In order to get this rotor out, we actually have to take the switch housing off. We have to unscrew it, and to unscrew it and take it off we have to take the pull chain out and we have to disconnect the wires. So now I'm just going to start by removing the switch housing cap. Don't lose those screws. Okay, so now let me move the camera and show you what's inside. Now on these 1983 and older originals, all that's going to be in here is a pull chain and some wires. You will not see a capacitor. So that makes it easy for us, especially because on this old of a fan you don't have a reverse switch. Those have 6 wires connected to them. So we're going to disconnect this threaded connector that holds the pull chain in. Pull that out. Okay, here's another thing we're going to have to get is a paper clip and stick it in these holes, and that's going to release the wires. And take note of the colors and where they're connected. Black is connected to L for line, red is connected to 2, that's our low speed wire, and blue is connected to 1, that's our high speed wire. So basically the way this works, if you look over here you'll see red, white, and blue wires. White is neutral, red goes to the low speed winding, and blue goes to the high speed winding. So over here you're just selecting between the windings on the pull chain. It's pretty simple. Yeah, so you can even use a skinny nail, just stick it in there and the wire will pull out. Just like that. So again, L is black, 1 is blue, and 2 is red. Alright, that's easy. So put that aside. Okay, so now to actually get the switch housing off, we have to get all these wires so they'll pull through this hole at the bottom. Whoa, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, see that? So here, these are actually knotted, so we have to unknot that. We have to get all these wire nuts off too. It's nice on this fan, a lot of these are labeled. See the tags? So just keep all these wires and all these wire nuts. This is for your light kit, that's why it has a white stripe on it. Black with a white stripe. This is your neutral. All that does is go down to the housing and go back up. If you have a light kit, you'll use neutral and the black and white striped wire. This is your hot. It was connected to this jumper wire, and this pushed into the pull chain. Okay, so all the wire nuts are off. We just have to unknot this wire bundle. Now these 3 wires I'm unknotting run directly to the top of the fan, and the reason they're knotted is so that you can't accidentally pull them out from the top. The knot keeps them all in the switch housing. Some of these tags might fall off, and that's okay. Alright, so now we're just going to straighten these out. When we put it back together, we'll knot it up the same way. And honestly, this is something you should only have to do once. If the fan's going to be inside and it's not going to get real dirty, it shouldn't be getting like this again. I have fans that are, 40 years old, have never been cleaned like this, and they look brand new inside. This one is just really dirty. It's probably in a really dirty environment or left outside in a barn. Yeah, so this, you're going to turn it clockwise, like this. And this fan is from the 80s, so it's going to have a metal switch housing. Some of the ones from the late 70s have plastic. They're really old. They have brass and cast iron 2-part oil cups. But they all come apart the same way. Alright, let's pull it straight out. Might have to kind of shepherd the wires through the hole, make sure nothing's getting bound up. And there you have it. Switch housing is off. Now I'm going to clean this with some WD-40, get all the grease out. If you look down here, you can see there's a good deal of gunk in the bottom. And that's one reason why the bearing is in such cruddy shape. There's just a lot of sludge down here. You can see that's pretty thick. We're going to get that squeaky clean. Much better. So all I did was shoot some WD-40 in there and go at it with a paper towel and a rag. Got all that thick crud off the bottom. Your goal here is to get all the thick cruddy stuff out so you only have good quality oil circulating in the fan. Just like your car engine. Alright guys, get your channel locks out. Now this thing is actually threaded in reverse. So we're going to turn it to the right, clockwise, to get it off. There we go. Just give it a little bit of a tug, get it loose. And the rest of it you can get with your fingers. Now what's nice about these old ones, pre-1984, 1985, thereabouts, is they have a nut here. The newer ones have a snap ring, and that uses a special tool to get off. Kind of a pain. So for this, you just have to pay attention to the sequence. You got the nut on the bottom, which has the beveled edge facing down. So I'm going to put that over here. Now you have this felt washer. It's going to be soaked in oil. Okay, and now you have the actual bearing itself. Just be careful you don't lose anything here. And this is the top raceway. Then you have another washer on top of that. So your bearing stack should look like this. Look at that. And now, I believe, yep, now the actual rotor comes out. I can see there's some gunk on the shaft. I think the biggest issue with this thing turning so stiffly isn't the bearing. I think it's the shaft and the grooves on the shaft being clogged with gunk. So it's going to take some cleaning and some effort here in a little bit. Oh man. Yep, I can see it does not look as clean as it should be. Man. Ooh. Not too good looking, but we're going to fix that. So now I'm just going to go ahead and clean this thing off, get all the oil and dirt and gunk off of it, especially the top. This part faces the ceiling, very dirty. Do not want to touch my camera like this. Well, this looks a lot better. I cleaned it top and bottom. I spent a long time on the inside cleaning that shaft out. You can see the oil return hole right there. I stuck the straw on the WD-40 down there and blasted that out, got that nice and clean. There's just a little bit of rust in there I couldn't quite get out, but I think it's going to be okay. So the next thing I'm going to do, and you can see all that gunk and dust is gone now. That's just with a wet rag and WD-40. Now the next thing I'm going to do is work on this shaft. I'm going to get it nice and clean. I'm going to clean out that groove really good. Try to get all that rust off. I'm going to use some steel wool, some WD-40, and paper towels and rags and try to get real clean. See how it goes. Here's an interesting aside. You can see the stator in these old 2.5 amp and older fans is actually set with lead. That's why people are usually pretty leery about removing them. The newer fans like the 1.1, 2.0 amp fans, they're not set with lead. You can remove the stator. In fact, I had to do that to fix a capacitor on my brother's fan. But these, the prevailing wisdom is that you don't want to touch them. You want to do everything you can to leave them in place when you're fixing up a fan. Alright, so I'm doing pretty good on the shaft. Not quite done yet, but it's looking a lot better. Getting a lot of that surface rust off. Just WD-40 and rags and a little bit of steel wool. Alright guys, I've cleaned the shaft pretty good with WD-40 and steel wool, and I used that, actually that same nail I used to get the wires out of the pull chain. I used this to help clean out the grooves really good on that spiral groove shaft. I noticed that from here all the way to the top was completely clogged, so oil wasn't even getting to the top of the shaft and coming back down. So yeah, this definitely was in need of a cleaning. I'm glad I did this. Alright, so now I'm just going to reassemble everything and I'll check back in when it's done. Alright guys, I put it back together. Let's give it a spin and see how it does. Wow, and this is with no oil. This is just cleaning it. I haven't even filled it up with oil yet. Already so much better. So I think what happened was that shaft was just so dry and it had a little bit of surface rust on it, and that was just gumming it up and keeping it from spinning freely like this. Alright guys, well, thanks for watching. Hope this helps.